In this question, look for the design of the question. Is it an Ernst question on applicable law, or a PRIL question on jurisdiction? Or is it a combined question about weak parties in general, and then you have both Brussels and Rome? Where it comes to applicable law, that is just any judge on the globe doing his own work. Where it comes to the jurisdiction, there it is about travel distance. So if the question is, how is the weak party protected in terms of the first question of private international law, being which court is having jurisdiction, then the logical explanation, well, that saves. And so the forum domicili means that you can go to the court by bike instead of having to take a plane to Brazil. And that is clearly a benefit for the weaker party. Alright. We have language, but I like your sort of statement, the access to the law. So sure, no weak party knows anything about law. Because after finishing law schools, you're a strong party. So it's a fiction, but applicable law comes with legal professionals like you who know the law, who might be next door. So you can go next door and ask, can you help me with our law? Instead of, after all taking the plane, to go to an attorney in Rio de Janeiro, being distracted by all kinds of events, where you have to go to the office and so forth. And so, these are the logical ones, and then maybe as a third item you could mention, it's less likely that as a weaker party you're tricked by that unknown applicable law. As in the private law of Saudi Arabia, I'm not an expert, but I think there are a few surprises in the private law of Saudi Arabia. For instance, pertaining to the position of women. So 3.5 billion world citizens should be a little bit worried about applicable law out of the country Saudi Arabia. Because most likely you lose your case. Because in private law there are not the same standards when it comes to rights and obligations as in other countries. I'm not having a judgment on that private law officially, and I'm just saying the effect of these R's are most likely not helpful for half of the population of the globe in terms of private law. And so that is then the content reasoning of the applicable law. And freedom of choice means that you may choose 400 different legal systems. I repeat, Article 3 means that you have party autonomy. Freedom of choice means you can choose any law you want. That is why it took 600 years that we allowed parties to do so. Because that is in itself sort of weird, isn't it? Yeah. But it's the reality. Alright. Question? Over there, sorry. Okay, so then you continue with the question, and then you say, another tool of protecting the weaker party is that you make a list of options of applicable law. So explain. So what would be your sentence to give answer to what is the scope of this privileged treatment after stating these facts? And how is that an answer to that item, that part of the question? It's correct.
Then the privileged treatment, you can choose any law that is limited to Article 5, and only limited to this corporation from 18.
And so we discuss the legislative techniques how to give privileged treatment to the consumer, or the weak party. One option is that you say, consumer or weak party, alarm bell, we choose. Option 1. Option 2 is, weak party, alarm bell, we limit the amount of choices from 400 to 4. With the same reasoning. Out of these 4, you either speak the language or you're nearby, or at least it's somewhere, either from departure or destination where you're physically there. And when you're physically somewhere, you can talk to legal professionals who are physically in the same territory, as opposed to Australia. Alright? Other options? It's on. It's only 25 minutes, so then I had to either give a break or push the start button again. Alright. Well, what are consumer contracts? Write a little essay on what are the consumer contracts. So let me test whether you were with me in the beginning. Over there. What is the no-brainer opening sentence for question number 3? Give it a shot. Open the first sentence of a little essay on it. Wonderful. This essay explains what consumer contracts are. There's also a teaching technique reason to force you to do this. Because at the end, you can check, am I still answering the question? So we can go on our knees and ask you, please check the exam whether you actually gave answer to the thing we asked. And it's closer at home when we force you to check your own introduction. So when your pen is writing consumer contracts, it's less likely that you start talking about jurisdiction. Because then your pen already knows, oh, I'm supposed to write about consumer contract. Alright. Well, neighbor, what are, in the body of that essay, what is the beef of the answer? So question 3. Yeah. No, but I want now the substantive answer, what are consumer contracts?
The contract includes the weaker party and possibly that which is in the trading profession.
Okay. And what is your authority of, and what is the language of this trading profession? What are alternative words? Neighbor. So open regulation. Exactly. Well, apply your strategy on this question.
Yeah, here stated that the consumer contract exists between a professional and the consumer doesn't know about the profession. So,
And how does the regulation, so not the statute but the regulation, defines that professional? So what are the words? And the other person? And then don't try to be creative. So if you use the words of the regulation, I know that at least 1 second in your life your nose was in the R, which we like. So use the words of the authority, yeah?
yeah, the professional is defined the person acting in the exercise of his trade or profession.
Wonderful. Neighbor, can you repeat that loud and clear?
The professional is defined as another person acting in the exercise of his trade or profession. Yes, but
We need to work on advocacy and decibels of voices. And neighbor, maybe 3 times as loud.
With another person acting in the exercise of his trade or profession.
point.
Well, I'm afraid that the guys over there are still not, let's say that their brain is not yet reprogrammed to wake up in the early morning and say these phrases. So help me out. Today no voice. Okay. As if you're in the disco. Then you know how to use your voice. I know you. I've been to parties.
The professional is defined as another person acting in the exercise of his trade or profession.
I have a question. We're defining the professional, but the actual thing is defining the consumer first, and then the professional's definition should follow the consumers, or should it not? So, like, the clause starts with what is a consumer, which is a natural person. That is important to know.
Yeah.
It can be like anybody else.
And then?
Which is regarded as being outside the trade or profession, and that one is concluding a contract with the professional who's another person, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Acting outside.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's still some freedom of the order.
Okay.
So it's that we move, in general, from, let's say, the words we use and I use in sort of the conversation to the sort of words of art within the rules. So once more, let's turn it around. The two phrases, to get used to them, loud and clear. You use her text, Article 6. Can you lend it to your neighbor? Loud and clear.
With another person acting in the exercise of his trade or profession, the professional shall be governed by the law of the country where the consumer has his habitual residence, provided that the professional.
No. So it's a definition of two parties that is using the same words, and one is acting in a trade and a profession, and the other is not acting in a trade or profession. And that is the lousy negative definition habit of jurists. What is the opposite of contractual liability? Non-contractual liability. Alright. Well, and what does it mean, profession and trade? Now we don't know the text of the regulation, trade or profession. Yeah, so the one outside is the consumer, and the person inside is the non-consumer. But we still do not know what is trade and profession. Suggestions. Yeah, so we know. Okay. So the person inside the trade or profession is the one who provides the goods and services, and the consumer pays the price. Okay. What is then trade and profession? The actual word, and why those two words? So why does it not say business people? Why two words, trade and profession? Yeah. trade and profession? Is there a difference between trade and profession?
Well, I don't know, but when I think of profession, it's what you do for as a living, or it's maybe your path, and then trade. You're in the trade of, I don't know, it's kind of like maybe you're not a professional in that, but you are involved in that type of business in one way or another. So
Yeah.
kind of like interact with companies or other people that are in that field.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, just as a little note at the side, these are these sort of last heritages of medieval thinking. The medieval thinking in castes. So certain people are priests, and others are warriors, and others are traders. This is just an heritage that we don't want to call a doctor a trader in healthcare. That feels sort of awkward. So we call a doctor a professional, whatever that may mean. And we think that someone who is selling Gucci bags, that is sort of, in this medieval thinking, not as professional as you think a doctor is. So that is a trader who makes something and sells it. That is the story behind. And in almost all legal systems, they continue to make this distinction where the other language is much more neutral. So the internal market language is freedom of movement of goods, services, capital and persons. No mentioning of traders and professionals. So the economic values, so economists are not affected by these sort of differences. They say, well, the Gucci bag maker and a doctor, they do that for a living. They produce something where the other party wants to pay for it. But still, the sort of caste system is in our rules, still. And we continue to believe in it, and there's case law on it that says, oh, this is it. An economist says, we still do not understand. That's the story. All right. I think that we deserve a refreshment. And let's continue the exam prep after the break. See you in 7 minutes.